Welcome back to my nightmare. Is it the worst idea ever to be recording in a strange house near Halloween with my back to the door? Yeah, probably. In the dark. Probably. But I'm doing it. And actually, I looked at the book while I was eating dinner, and it's the last 3 chapters. Like, I think one of them is like 2 pages long. So we're going to power through this. We're going to get through chapter 5, 6, and 7 of Carmilla 86. And then you will have had the whole story. And I am going to ignore all the creepy noises that this house makes sometimes when there's no noise to cover up. And we are going to do it. I am in a strange person's house, as I've said in previous videos. The vibes are that you are sitting at the table with me, enjoying me reading you a story. There may be noises like from the outside world, like dogs, or there's a lawnmower now. That's weird, but and I also think if you are joining us at this point, you should go back and listen to the first episode because there are some content warnings. This is a vampire novel that takes place in the 1980s and present day. So there is some choice language. So viewer discretion is advised. Anyway, this has really been a nice distraction. May I just say, I just found out some horrible news about my family yesterday. So this has been a really enjoyable task to have to focus on. So sit back, relax. Welcome back to my nightmare. And we are going to, in case I didn't say it, because I literally can't remember, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the stunning conclusion of Carmilla 86 by Avery Morstan. We are on chapter 5. The cabin, present day. Carmilla had excused herself to freshen her makeup, which left Hugo to mull over what she'd said, dejectedly. He would note in his report later that he definitely was dejected. Now that he was a vampire, it wouldn't be an official report, but he still felt like going through the motions. Going through the human motions was something he'd figured out on his own. It was almost like having to clear up any unfinished business before moving on, go towards the non-light Hugo. He needed to know every inch of this case to let it go. Bertha had apparently needed to slaughter her cousin in a cheaply built haunted house. As Carmilla slid back into the booth with barely a noise, Hugo thought of another question that had been bothering him. And since Carmilla seemed to have a verbal vendetta against men as a concept, he figured she'd love to tell him how wrong he was. "Doesn't it make you feel gross?" he asked. Carmilla tilted her head in a way that implied she understood the question but wanted to force him to elaborate anyway. He blushed. It was a power move that made him squirm uncomfortably in his chair. "You're stalking this person with sexual intent. She's not comfortable with her own sexuality. You're kind of forcing yourself on her. Doesn't it make you feel, I don't know, like a creep?" "Haven't you ever done the same thing?" Carmilla asked. "I told you before, I haven't been like this." "I didn't mean that," Carmilla interrupted. She sighed. "You're what? 22, 23. You're a male. You're taught to stalk your prey even without your new mature layer over it. You've probably gone up to a girl in a club," at Hugo's snort she amended her statement, "or in a library, and forced her to take your number under the guise of studying. You've gone up to a girl at a school dance, perhaps, or slid into her DMs. Didn't that ever make you uncomfortable?" "I get what you're saying, but it's hardly the same thing," Hugo replied quickly. Carmilla tilted her head, shrugging with her mouth instead of her shoulders. "Perhaps. Perhaps it isn't. Perhaps I was just shooting my shot too. I saw a girl, she saw me, we wanted each other. She was in her 30s and a consenting adult. I was in my hundreds, yes, but I think the only reason you're objecting comes back to my being a woman and your being uncomfortable with sexuality as a whole," Carmilla said. She hesitated. "I don't condone what you're implying, though. That's part of the reason I helped Bertha." Hugo let it go. He still didn't like it, the idea that someone who was hundreds of years older than Laura even with Laura's consent, could just lay in wait for her. He had a long life to live now, and he wondered if he'd ever change his stance on taking a human lover. Would being a vampire get lonely? What about other vampires? Would it be better to find one of them? He glanced at Carmilla, and she recoiled. "Don't even think about it," she said, as if she could know what he was thinking. "I'm a pescatarian." It took him a second, but then he did laugh. "Jesus Christ, who taught you that?" Carmilla winked. "Time helps you develop a sense of humor." Chapter 6. Laura, March 16th, 1986. I didn't sleep much, if I'm being honest. Carmilla and I talked all night, and I didn't get home until late. The front door to our house was locked, which meant I had to get the ladder from the barn and climb up into my bedroom. Carmilla promised she'd put the ladder back for me and blew me a kiss as I slid in the window. I know the door being locked was my dad trying to prove some kind of point about it being his house, his rules, but I didn't really care. He was up early, of course, and banging around the house before starting his morning chores. It was too loud for me to actually rest, so I begrudgingly got dressed and went downstairs. I knew if I drove into town, Alex would be baking, and he'd listen to my impossible story and tell me, like any good friend, what I should do, or ask me what sex with a vampire was like. I don't know which of them, but he would do one or the other for sure. Dad glared at me as I left. "Where are you going?" he asked. I shrugged. "Church," I told him. It was a Sunday morning, like he was going to argue. There was something about being at the bakery with Alex and Donnie that tugged at me. I couldn't understand what it was. Inside, where my heart was, everything felt tense. I had the tingling sensation that we would be saying goodbye soon, and I didn't want to. I wanted to cling to them, crush them against me, and never let go. "So, you're telling me," Alex said, "she is a vampire. You're probably going to either run off into the sunset with her or be killed." I nodded. "I'm really hoping for the sunset, but she's kind of a predator, so I'm wondering if she's going to go for the eat instead of be eaten." "Girl, I am proud of you for that joke," Alex said with the brightest smile. He was behind the counter packing orders, and Donnie and I were at our usual table by the window. No one was in this early, especially on a Sunday. Everyone was probably where I said I was going to be, church. They'd come in afterwards for coffee and buy the pound slices of raspberry pound cake. Donnie was sipping coffee out of a cracked mug with our high school logo on the front. Go Dragons, I guess. "I can see the appeal," Donnie said. She shrugged. "I think the other one is kind of cute." At first, I didn't get what she was talking about. I squinted and frowned. "Other one?" "You know, the blonde girl," Donnie said. When I still didn't register who she meant, she rolled her eyes. "From the club, the girl." "The dead roommate," Alex filled in. I gasped. "Oh my God, Donnie." "Those teeth, honey, I could get into it is all I'm saying," Donnie said with a shrug as she continued to sip at her drink. "Bertha, my roommate, the one who's supposed to be dead and is suddenly back into my life, very appealing," I replied snappishly. I guess I shouldn't have been so sarcastic with her, but she was used to it. "She is gorgeous, and who doesn't love a little danger fuck?" Donnie said. "Don't be a hypocrite. You don't get all the beautiful monsters to yourself." "I guess so," I replied. I felt a little breathless. Donnie and Bertha? How would that even work? I couldn't judge her. At the end of the day, I can't say that's not part of the appeal with Carmilla. The fact that any moment she could end my life, but she chooses not to. She chooses to protect me. It's kind of sweet. Honestly, it's the ultimate bad guy redemption. It's like the rakes in those historical romance novels the church ladies pretend not to read. There was a secret stash of them behind the Bibles in the Sunday school room, and I used to sneak one every now and then when I was watching the little kids. I pretended to myself that it was the blonde man with the long hair, But now I know I was much more invested in the brunette girl with her bodice ripped open, waiting to be ravished. What the fuck is wrong with me? Earth to Laura, Alex said. I started back into this century. I said, what are you going to do? It's not like you can come out to daddy. That's what I've been trying to tell you for like 1,000,000 trillion years. 1,000,000 years is not an actual unit of measurement for this problem, Donnie scolded. I gave a breathless laugh. She scowled at me. What? It is a unit of measurement, but not the way he's using it. Use something else. Alex stuck his tongue out at her. I'm going to need you not to refer to my dad as daddy, I told him. I'm torn. I want there to be a timeline where I can be myself and still have my dad. Alex and Donnie both looked sad. They shared some glance I didn't understand, and then Alex said, Honey, there's a lot of people who want that, but that's not usually how it goes. Truly, Donnie said gently. She reached over to pat my hand. My family is only okay with the idea in theory. I don't know what they'd do if I put it into practice. You know we're here for you, whatever happens. You do know that, right? I do, I said, gripping her hand back. Alex just rolled his eyes. I'm kind of rooting for the vampire, honestly, he said. He brought over a little tray of cookies for us in the shape of sun with sparkling yellow sprinkles. As bogus as that sounds. I grinned up to him as I bit into the soft, sandy cookie. Secretly, me too. I spent the rest of the morning with them and some of the afternoon, too. I was glad to know that if something did happen, the one thing I could take away from this lifetime was how lucky I was to have friends like Donnie and Alex. Not everyone got that, and it was kind of a weird situation. Laura, March 17th, 1986. Carmilla woke me from a nightmare, but since I was dreaming of her, I didn't mind. The day had been long. Dad was angry that Luke hadn't come to help him this morning, and he supposed that we had some sort of fight or I'd done something to upset him. The reality weighed on me. There were dark circles under my eyes, and I was exhausted from the late nights, so he didn't seem to mind when I excused myself to bed early. In the dream, I was transported back to the frat house, only this time when Carmilla took Bertha upstairs, I followed. My organs seemed to burn with a need I didn't have a name for. My heart thudded in my chest, ringing my ears with each slow, hideous beat. I swallowed. My throat was bone dry, an expression I never understood until this moment. Bones weren't dry. They were wet with flesh and blood that flowed over them, but my mouth was sun-bleached and dusted. I went into the bedroom. Carmilla held out Bertha's lifeless body and grinned at me, her teeth stained with blood. Have some, she offered in a suggestive whisper. I felt myself grinning back, teeth scraping my lip as I bent down and bit into my dead friend's flesh. I bolted upright at the sound of my actual bedroom window being slid open. Breathless, I took in the sight before me. Carmilla was framed in the window. Behind her was the pale purple sky of the night just before the dawn. I could see the stretching, fingery black shadows of trees in the distance, obscured only by the mist that gathered in those tiny hours just before the sun rose. Carmilla's voluminous hair fell in waves over her shoulders and framed that perfect face. She wasn't wearing a jacket or shoes, just a silky top that draped over her like a lavender cloud, and a pair of black jeans that were so tight they creaked when she moved. May I come in? She asked, as if she weren't already halfway in. I fell back against my pillows. I had a bad dream, I whispered back to her. Her smile was soft and sarcastic, like her. Shall I kiss you better? Carmilla teased. She pulled herself into my room the rest of the way. Her feet made gentle padding noises as she came to my bed. I grinned up at her. Please, I whispered. I reached for her, my arms wrapping instinctively around her as she climbed under my covers. The sheets that had twisted themselves around my legs seemed to melt away, leaving space for her to make her signature move, shoving her thigh between my legs. I didn't care. It was a good move, and all of our limbs were twisting together anyway. We were two trees growing together with roots that ran deep and strong. Her hands combed through my short hair. She was studying my face so close I could feel her breath. Her expression was vulnerable as she looked at me, like she was weighing something. Her nose brushed against mine. "Really?" she whispered. Did I want this? Was that what she was asking? Did I want her? "Truly," I said. She dipped down and pressed her lips to mine. They were full and warm. I couldn't fight it. Not that I've been trying to, anyway. I wanted all of it. I wanted to feel the comforting weight of her pressing into me, the cliched tangle of our tongues together, and the slide of her skin over mine. "I meant what I said," she whispered against my throat. "I will love you more than anyone. I will love you until the end of time. And I know the person that is set to bring that about, so I know what I'm promising." I laughed. I don't know if I believed her. I don't think I did. But I don't mind being wrong either. Even now, recounting what happened, I can still hear her. I can still hear her voice, pleading with me to touch her. It was like everything had been building to this moment. We were together, and something told me we would always be together. The cabin. Present. Hugo was blushing and squirming in his seat. He opened the diary and flipped to that final page, about midway through. The paper crinkled as he flipped it around so Carmilla could see what he was seeing. "See, it just ends there," Hugo said. He pointed at the spot he indicated. There had been a very vivid description of Carmilla and Laura's first coupling, only to have the writing and in a jagged line. Parts of the page had been torn out, and several pages afterward as well. "See, it looks like she was writing, but she was interrupted, maybe. I obviously don't need the gory details. I just wanted to know what really happened." "And by gory details, you mean the sex? Because I would measure what happened to her by something else," Carmilla told him. He was so focused on her that he hadn't noticed the person approaching the table. She placed a hand on Carmilla's shoulder, and when Carmilla looked up at her, her face was transformed. The smile that spread on her lips, like the dawn breaking, only proved how false, how sardonic all of her other expressions had been. Carmilla was looking on the face of someone she truly loved. Hugo was looking at a ghost. "Are you being a good girl, Millie?" the woman said with a grin and a wink. Her hair was still short, but styled with a modern fade on the sides, leading into a flop that fell across her forehead in bangs. She was wearing an old denim jacket and tight blue jeans, though that suggested the era the diary was from. Hugo's heart hammered in his chest. Obviously, he'd had suspicions. When the body had been found, it was so badly decomposed that IDing it had relied on remnants of clothes and a wallet. "I'm always good," Carmilla purred back. She shifted at the table, making room so Laura could slide in beside her lover. "Sure you are," Laura said. She leaned back and draped an arm around the back of the booth, which also meant around Carmilla, and looked at Hugo. She tutted. "Oh, you're just a baby." He bristled. "I am a newly made vampire, yes, but I don't think I would call myself a baby." Laura smirked at him. "You didn't call yourself a baby. I called you a baby. What are you interrogating my partner for?" "I was just returning this," Hugo said. This wasn't how he imagined Laura when he'd initially started looking into the case. This woman was full of herself, and it oozed out of her. It made him nervous. He felt even more like he was dancing on the edge of a sword than when he was with Carmilla. Meanwhile, Carmilla had relaxed to such a degree that she seemed almost like a puppy. Laura's eyes landed on the diary, and her smile became tight. It was more of a grimace than a smile. She reached out with one hand and picked the book up from where it lay, holding it as she read over the last page. Her lips twisted to the side. "Good times. Love at first bite, I guess," Laura said, and Carmilla snorted. "Well, you've returned it. What are you still doing here?" "Pardon?" Hugo asked, his eyes going wide. Laura pulled her arm back and leaned forward on the table, crossing her arms under her with her eyebrow raised expectantly. "You've returned the diary, but you're lingering," she said in a low voice. "What are you still doing here?" I was just leaving. It was nice to meet you, both of you," Hugo said, and he scrambled to his feet. He had a brief thought about paying for his drinks, but then he decided he'd rather risk Frankie coming after him than Laura, and it was very clear to him he was no longer welcome. Both of them burst into laughter after the door closed behind him. "Incorrigible," Carmilla said. Laura snorted. "Me? Are you saying you haven't been up to your old tricks?" she asked. Carmilla leaned over and pressed her lips against Laura's cheek. "Think of it this way. If he survives, then we'll have a new friend to play with." She sighed and hugged Laura's upper arm. "How is everyone?" "Bert is doing great. He's settling into his new identity, and I'm proud. Donnie and Alex have started trying to pass Bert off as their kid. It would be cute if I didn't know that they were sleeping together," Laura said. She kissed Carmilla's forehead. "Did you have a nice time?" "It's better now that you're here," Carmilla told her. Laura grinned. "Feel the same way about you, Millie." Laura glanced over at the bar, her brows knitting together in confusion. She raised her voice to yell, "Hey, Frankie! Who's the new kid?" Frankie paused in serving a drink, followed where Laura was looking, and then rolled her eyes. "That's Kyle." Chapter 7. Laura. June 28th, 1986. New life, new journal, new me. It's been a very strange couple of months. Looking back on everything that happened and attempting to write about it now, so far after, adds to the eerie peculiarity of it all. Is that weird? Do those words mean the same thing? I said in my last diary I wasn't a great writer, but now I have all the time in the world to get better at it. I think I'm starting to like it too. Maybe I've found my calling. Carmilla got me this journal to replace my old one, and it's much nicer. It's much more me, I think. It's brown leather and soft. I like to drag my fingers over the cover and feel the texture. My skin feels so much more sensitive now. I could spend hours just brushing my fingertips back and forth, feeling the pebbled cover, memorizing every crevice. I asked her why she chose brown and not black. Black is kind of her favorite color after all. And it just seemed fitting for the new life we're creating together. But she pressed the brown journal into my hands and said, "Because it's for you." I'm almost 100% sure she stole it. It's nice, too, because there's no lock. I don't need one. I trust her not to read it unless I gave her permission. I might just let her one day. There's no remnants of my dad or pink glitter or the girl I was supposed to grow into. Instead, it's a reflection of the woman I've chosen to become. It's strong, it's durable, and it has a nice weight in my hands. I feel like I can really be myself on these cream-colored pages. I suppose I should start from that horrible night a few months ago and move forward. After our time together, Carmilla had been asleep in my bed, curled against my back, and I was writing in my diary. It was how my father found us. He'd come to let me know that Luke had suffered the same vicious animal attack as the driver of that car, and that Luke wouldn't recover. I'm assuming he wanted me to be more upset about it than I was. I'm also assuming he didn't want me to be naked in my bed with a woman, but we don't always get what we want out of life, I guess. I was disowned, of course, and threatened. Things were tossed at us. My prettiest perfume bottle, which was one of the few things I had left from my mom, made a gorgeous shattering noise when it hit the wall behind my head, filling my bedroom with the overly sweet, toxic smell of gardenias. It took Carmilla weeks to fully wash the stench from her hair. It lingered, as if my dad was haunting us. Everyone needs a trigger, you know? A catalyst. He tried to hurt her, and that thing I'd been denying, the thing that had been worrying inside of me, snapped. When I saw him standing over her, brandishing my blow dryer like a weenie, as if a blow dryer could do anything, Dad, I snarled. Before I could comprehend what was happening, I was overcome with instinct. My skin crawled like I was molting it off, and I felt sudden strength and that same protective urge I'd felt with Donnie and Alex pumping through my veins. The world brightened even in the dark, and I could see and smell so many things. With strength I didn't know I had, I pushed him against the door, ready to tear him apart. I felt like my soul was ripping free of some cocoon, crawling out of my body and then back again. I felt like I should have wings. "Laura, honey, drop him," Carmilla said. I looked down. When I say I had pinned him, I had literally lifted him off the floor and had him pinned by the throat. He was peeing. He was shaking. My daddy was afraid of me. Good. "I don't want you to regret anything," she told me later. We were in a hotel room several states away. We did see a big ball of twine on the side of the road for anyone keeping up, and then we shut ourselves inside. My murder and the, quote, attack, unquote, on my dad by some weird animal was making national headlines. I was going to have to dye my hair. It didn't matter. I didn't care. I had Carmilla and nights in an overly chlorinated pool next to Route 66, and all the time in the world. I had her body next to mine in a heart-shaped bed. I kissed her. "I don't think I could ever regret anything," I whispered. I still don't understand what happened, how I could be what I am now without her doing something. But the world is so much more now, and I can't wait to explore it with her. I don't want to be more specific than that. I mean, what if this journal fell into the wrong hands? The hunger burns my throat and lungs. It buzzes inside my stomach with a growing demand. And even though I'm deliriously happy, I'm still sad. "It's okay to grieve," she said softly. She kissed the tip of my nose. "We have time." We have to stay indoors now. I'm going to miss the sun and the sunrises, but she said there's no vampire in history that's ever been able to walk out in the daytime without being burnt to a crisp, and I just won't risk that with her. I'll miss it, but I'd rather have an endless adventure with this amazing woman by my side than 1,000 sunrises and sunsets. I've given myself over to the darkness, just like I said I was going to. Okay, that's super fun. Was that fun for you? It was fun for me, for sure. So did anyone catch the trick that Laura's talking about, Carmilla playing on Hugo? Because my friends who read the book didn't catch it, and I think it's one of the funniest things I've ever done. If you didn't and you want to go back and listen, or you want to read again, I'll let you go do that. So in 3, 2, 1, I'm going to tell you what I did. 3, 2. In the beginning, Hugo's talking about not being able to go in the sun. And then Carmilla, when she meets him, tells him that he'll grow his strength over time. So when Laura walks into the bar and sits down and says to Carmilla, "Have you been playing your old tricks?" And Carmilla says, "If he survives, we will have a good friend or an enemy." And then you go back to the journal, the new journal, and Laura's like, "We can't go out in the sun." Basically, by telling Hugo he can go in the sun, Carmilla is trying to get him to unalive himself, basically. And then also the ghost of Kyle being real was my favorite gag throughout that. Kyle is a villain from one of the Quaint City series who gets unalived in one of the stories, in one of the Quaint City After Dark stories. And so having Hugo not be able to see him, but Laura can see him, I thought was pretty funny, because the whole time Hugo's not sure if Frankie is just insane or if there's really a guy. And then after he's left, Laura confirms that the ghost of Kyle is right there. Kyle appears in both the Quaint City and Quaint City After Dark series. He is the villain in the first Quaint City book, and then he is a character in Quaint City After Dark. There's no Kyle redemption story. What he did was awful, but he is also a ghost now. So anyway, I hope that you liked it. I hope that you enjoyed that presentation of my book. Let me know what you'd like to read next. Maybe, I don't know. It has to be one I've written because I own the rights to them. But yeah, if you like this video, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing it with a friend. Go outside, trick or treat. I don't know. It's Halloween now. It's not going to be Halloween when you read this. I don't know why I said that. So anyway, go outside, take a walk, get a snack. I'm going to go make some cocoa. Take care of yourself. I am so glad that you're here. You're the only one of you that I have. I will see you next time. Bye.